Well, welcome in, everyone. I'm so happy to see all of you again. And some of you I saw at my first session. I'm not sure if everyone, but I know that I'm working with K through 5 um, music teachers today. So I'm so glad you're all here. At Innovation Arts Academy, we work with a lot of kids that age. And uh, they can be What's so interesting about us, our students is that they can be any different level. So I have a 7-year-old who is going to the National Youth Theater Experience, which is a musical theater festival in Louisville with us. She's the littlest one in the group, but she can hang with all of those kids, including the teenagers. She has great focus. She picks up really quick. She's just an incredible little performer. And she's been training at Innovation since she was 3. So she has quite a lot of knowledge and she kind of knows what she's doing. And, and then, in our company, a fifth grader, for example, that could be someone who just registered this spring and has never taken a musical theater class before, and is like, "Oh, what is this like kickball change? Like, what are we doing here? Jazz hands, and stage right and stage left, and then I have fifth graders in my company who have been there since they were very little, kindergarten, first grade, and those fifth graders, they can do really intricate character analysis. They can talk about character relationships. They can sing harmony. They can hold, I can ask them to sing a second soprano or an alto part. Um, the skills really vary, and elementary is a really wonderful time because they are young enough to still want to play with you and old enough to um, usually, I guess maybe not as much in kindergarten, but old enough to do a lot of those skills, tie their shoes, use scissors, write some notes or whatever. And so it's so nice to work with that age of student. I love the age of wonder. I love when they're still, they still love magic and they'll just try anything. They're so courageous and adventurous. I hope you're having fun with your elementary classrooms and that you're finding it really a rewarding age group to work with. So, I will start by just talking a little bit about where I'm drawing material today and kind of where I'm coming from. So, in addition to being the executive director at Innovation Arts Academy, I also am a private vocal coach and have done that for over 30 years. And I have a doctorate in vocal performance. I have a master's in vocal performance, and both of those are from UK. I came here actually to study. And then my undergraduate degree was music education. And I got that degree in Canada, where I'm from. So I started to, as I worked with young people, I started to really get into musical theater and musical theater singing. And so my doctorate was the product of about 10 years of research, learning more about different vocal styles and how they are produced technically, in terms of what voice science says is happening in the body. And so I focused my dissertation on the voice science differences between classical singing, which I was trained in, operatic singing, and like a musical theater belted sound, which also can be found in lots of other music styles, right? Jazz, um, musical theater, pop, and even sometimes opera singers use their chest voice in very dramatic ways. And so I just started really getting into, what are these vocal mechanisms? What is happening in the voice as we use our head voice, as we call out, as we use more speech level singing. And so some of what I'll bring up in my PowerPoint today will be technical and stuff from my dissertation, and so feel free to ask questions, and I will try not to go too quickly. But I'm going to try to be really practical with you as well and offer examples, exercises that you can do, and ways that you can explore voice with your students, so that they start to think about vocal style and all the different wonderful ways that they can use their voice. So sometimes I think of vocal styles as kind of like accents. Like the same person can maybe, there's all these videos of Millie Bobby Brown doing like five different accents, right? And so it's your voice, but you can use it in a lot of different ways. And so I truly believe, and I teach that that singing voices can be used in a lot of different ways also. So, let's just let's start at the very beginning. Let's see here. Start here. So this is one of my favorite musical theater singers. I'm hoping sound comes through. I'm going to play YouTube clips today, so fingers crossed that this works. Let's give this a go. Can you see this? Let's see, Jesse. Yes, I got a thumbs up. Great. Okay, I've got the color wheel spinning, so we'll see if this kicks in. Hopefully it will. Here we go.
Oh. Julie,
Can you hear it?
I've been busting to tell you something lately. You have? Well, the reason I didn't care to tell you before was because you didn't have a fella of your own. Now that you got one, I can tell you about mine. Oh, I'm glad you got a fella, Carrie. What's his name? His name is Mr. Snow, and an upstanding man is he. He comes home every night in his round-bottom boat with a net full of herring from the sea. An almost perfect beau, as refined as a girl could wish. But he spends so much time in his round-bottom boat that he can't seem to lose the smell of fish.
Okay, so you get the idea. This is Jessie Mueller in Carousel. And now we're going to hear her sing something very different. Uh-oh.
The darkness of bipolar depression made me feel like life.
Back. I always have to pay the piper if you want YouTube. Okay, here we go.
Not simple to say, honestly, I don't recognize these shoes. They have place, stage, are taken, and I gave I'm sweet, still remember that.
I'm gonna skip to a little more intense part of the song here.
Dr. Andre, we're having a hard time hearing this particular.
But you're having a hard time hearing this?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for telling me. Okay. Well, Jesse belts beautifully. I'll just say that. I'll stop sharing. So you heard Mr. Snow okay, but this one got a little distorted.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
when we all have our cameras on, but I think most of this group have heard her sing that one before. So,
Yeah.
but we hadn't heard the first clip, so that's good.
Okay, good. So I'm so sorry. I'm looking at comments. I see I love waitress. Lots of people loving her. Some people it's lagging for. Sorry about the lag. Yes, but I've watched this 100 times. I love it. Okay, great. Okay. Well, wonderful. So let's just talk about Jessie a little bit. She was trained at Ithaca College by actually a voice teacher who specialized in jazz. And so Jessie learned all these different vocal styles, and she became this very um, versatile musical theater performer. And so you can hear that voice, and you can listen on your own time too. It's definitely got that classical training. It's got that nice, heady, like domey space, right? But she also has that access to her called voice, where there's some chest mixed into the sound. And we're getting just like a much different approach, a much different color in the voice there. So I want to talk about, what makes that happen, and play with some different sounds today. So let me pull up now this PowerPoint. I'm going to screen share. Okay. So vocal techniques, classical to contemporary. Let's go to talking points. So compare sounds we hear in two contrasting recordings of Jessie Mueller. We didn't do What's the Use of Wondering. We actually did Mr. Snow, and She Used to Be Mine from Waitress. So if you want to pop any comments into the chat about what you heard or what you've heard before, maybe you've not heard her sing Carousel, and so you want to talk about what that was like. You knew she sang Waitress, but hadn't heard that other style. Um, let's just talk a little bit about vocal style aesthetics. So much of it is about what we hear and what we think we're hearing. But definitely we can hear a country song and go, that's country music. We can hear a jazz song and go, that's jazz. That's a jazz standard. And so we know the difference between different styles. But what are the qualities that sort of make up those style aesthetics? So that's some of what we're going to talk about. And if you have any questions or comments, just go ahead and throw them up in the chat. So some basics of vocal style. What changes can be made to the singing instrument to change the vocal style? So we're going to talk about the big, the sort of the biggest change, I guess, technically, which is whether you're singing in a head dominant or a chest dominant mechanism, or a mix of both, and the different varying degrees of those mixed sounds. And then we will also look at some other stylistic factors, just things that you're commonly going to find in one style that you wouldn't find in another style. So we'll talk about all of that. This is an easy one for you to comment on. What types of vocal styles are your students exposed to? What are they listening to? And for which styles do you feel that they should have an understanding of healthy vocal technique? So please light up the chat bar with any thoughts you have on that. Pop, so much pop. Yes, they do. They do listen to pop and they sing a lot of pop. Demon Hunters. Yes. Rap, hip hop, country. Lots of pop and country. Country, love it. K-pop. Yes, that is the new thing. Pop country. I'm seeing a lot of the same answers here. Musical theater belting. Yes. Some vocal fry. Yes, absolutely. You're going to hear that. And sometimes they don't know how to do that. Worship music, great. Yep. Pop and country. Yep. 100%. Yep. And so this is what I like to say. When I first came to the United States, people were so weirded out that I was teaching young children voice lessons. And in Canada, that it's not strange at all to teach little kids singing lessons. They start singing lessons at the same time they start piano and violin in Canada. And we have a wonderful repertoire series book. In fact, let me hold a few of these up because they are really great for unison singing. So they're designed to be solo books, but these are from the Royal Conservatory. And they are leveled. So there's a grade 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10. There's even a pre-K or like a preliminary series. And they are in a perfect range for children's voices. They're all unison, like I said, because they're designed for solo singing, but they would be fine for unison singing in a classroom. They are, they're top down, a lot of them. They offer several languages. So I'll read you a few things. Regenlied, which is in German, Down in the Valley, an American folk song, All'inverno le passato, an Italian folk song, Viva la Canadiana, a French Canadian folk song, When the Saints Go Marching In, an African American spiritual, Lavender's Blue, an English folk song, The Spider Hunter, which is an American composer. They have such delicious titles like Silver Moon and The Wind and Hummingbirds and Sing a Rainbow. So, this level 1 singing book would be perfect for unison singing for, I would say, first through third grade. Anyway, in Canada, we study in these repertoire books, and our kids take leveled exams, and they can start as little as 4 or 5 in the introductory level. So, and so we're used to it, but I said, hey, I will teach young kids, and a lot of people thought, oh no, you shouldn't teach young kids singing lessons. Wait until their voices have developed. Wait till they go through puberty. And I always say, you know what? If I don't teach them how to sing, Britney Spears is going to teach them how to sing, or some other person on the radio is going to teach them how to sing. So I want to teach them how to sing. And I want to teach them how to sing with good technique, no matter what style they sing in. And so this is something you can know as a voice teacher, as someone who's helping children to use their singing voices every day, that your students can learn to sing all different styles with healthy technique. And they don't have to all be the same style either. They don't all have to sound like choral music. They do not have to sing K-pop Demon Hunters the same way they would sing Oh Shenandoah, the pipes are calling, or whatever, right? They can sing them differently with different vocal styles. So let's just look a little bit now at vocal modes, and we're just going to talk a little bit about sort of what makes up head voice singing and more of like a belted style of singing. So here are your modes of vocal fold vibration. You see mode 1, your chest voice. So we use our chest voice when we speak. Our vocal folds are shorter and thicker or square edged as they contact. We use them for lower pitches, or we use it for lower pitches, and we call it thyroarytenoid because the mechanism that adjusts pitch in chest voice is the actual vocal cord apparatus, which is called the thyroarytenoid muscle. Because of its attachment, it's named that way. So um, that is your mode one, or your chest voice. And you will probably notice that your students are more comfortable or better or even like only able to use this mechanism when they first start to sing in a group. Why? Or to sing in the classroom. Why? Because they speak there. They don't go around talking like this, most of them, right? They mostly speak in their mode one. And so, of course, it's natural for singing to flow out of that mode. And so sometimes teachers are afraid of things being too low. I would say, yes, you can have a song that's too low for elementary age students. Most of them can't sing, too much lower than a B flat three, right? So this is a B flat three. If you sing that with me, that's a low note for most elementary age students, unchanged voices, right? Maybe they can sing an A. A few special ones have the A flat and the G, but of course, you're always going to meet exceptions to this rule. But I would say so for healthy chest singing, I would say like use kind of around B flat or maybe A three as sort of like these are the lowest comfortable notes that my elementary students can sing. So can we start there? Absolutely. Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah. And you don't have to be afraid of them not yet being able to access their head voice. If they can match pitch and they can sing smoothly and gently in mode one, that's a great place to start, especially with younger ones, because sometimes they haven't explored their head voice yet. Mode two is a lot of times where we do a lot of singing. Our vocal folds are stretched out longer and thinner. If you think about, a long, thin elastic band, that's going to play a higher pitch than a fat, thick one. So it's the same with vocal folds. That's what's cool about vocal folds is they can be thicker or thinner, and they can stretch longer or shorter. So you have upper margin contact, so that just means like this, right? And higher pitches, and we call it cricothyroid because that is how they're attached. So the vocal folds are going to adjust pitch inside of themselves. They're going to just lengthen and shorten inside of themselves up to about a B, up to about here. I can get to about there and in my speaking voice, my chest mechanism. And then after that, around a C, right? Around this high C, C5, we get to that place where if they do not switch into some sort of head mechanism, weird things are going to happen. It's going to flip, it's going to crack, it's going to break, they're going to sound like they're yelling. And so, why is that? Well, biologically, it's because that is the point where, for unchanged voices, their cricothyroid stretcher engages to further stretch the vocal folds. So the vocal folds can stretch within themselves to a certain degree, and then they get to the place where out here in front has to pull forward and down to keep them stretching. So that means that a new muscle mechanism is being engaged. And that is why head voice often is experienced differently than chest voice for students. And that is why sometimes they struggle with those two registers and coordinating them. So let's just look a little bit at the mechanisms here. So you're looking, this diagram, you're looking down into the vocal folds from above. This V-shaped bone that is in front is your hyoid bone. And I think actually we're not seeing the hyoid bone. I lied. I think that's just your thyroid cartilage. Okay, so this sort of V-shaped thing in front is the thyroid cartilage, and you see how the vocal folds are attached there at the front. So the front is facing down in the picture, and that little bump in the front is your Adam's apple. So you can see how the vocal folds are attached behind there. And then the arytenoids at the back that kind of look like little eardrum bones at the back there, they close the vocal folds. Okay, so the vocal folds are that middle muscle that looks like a stretched out elastic band. Those are your thyroarytenoid muscles. We call it TA, and it runs from your thyroid cartilage to the arytenoids at the back. And so it shortens and thickens the vocal folds, and this means lower pitches. Any questions? I'm checking. I heard someone's talking about making that switch from being in SpongeBob to Fiona. Very different vocal mechanisms, right? Yeah, Fiona's gonna do something different. So good. I'm glad this is going to be helpful. Oh, this isn't a book, it's a dissertation, but at the end I'll share how you can read the whole thing if you'd like to. Um, so, okay, let's look at now the cricothyroid muscle. So this is the vocal fold stretcher. Okay, so this thing is going to help the vocal fold stretch out more so that we can sing higher pitches beyond our speaking voice and into our head voice. So what it does, it's a little hard to see from this diagram, but if you see the two arrows coming together, kind of down at the bottom, you'll see how the thyroid cartilage is pulling down and the cricoid cartilage is pulling up. And what ends up happening then is that the vocal folds in the center there, you can see them as that center line. You can imagine, thinking scientifically, when that happens, the vocal cords get stretched out. So as the thyroid cartilage leans forward, the vocal folds are stretching and thinning out. And so they're pulled at each end like an elastic band, and this means higher pitches. We're going to call this CT or cricothyroid engagement. So this is the difference between head voice and chest voice. Let's look
Dr.
at,
MJ, we have one question.
yeah.
Is would this impact a person with a thyroid disorder?
No, actually, no. Your vocal folds are not impacted by your thyroid function at all. It's not in a place where it affects any of these um, cartilages or muscles. So that is a good question, though. Um, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking that question. I have an underactive thyroid too. So, one thing that it can do is sometimes you get a little dehydrated having an underactive thyroid. So you have to be careful to stay hydrated, which is why I drink one of these bubbas every day. Um, Okay, let's go on and talk now. I'm t I'm talking about classical, but really what I mean is head dominant singing, okay? So, that's just a sort of stereotypical word. Lots of classical singers use their chest voice, but I'm talking about sort of head dominant sound. So, what you would think of as traditional classical singing or traditional choral singing. So we want that CT muscle more engaged. And you see how the glottis configuration, that's just showing how the vocal folds are touching. So we saw how the vocal folds are shaped like this. So this is CT dominant singing, right? Your two vocal folds, like tiny thin pieces of paper, are vibrating together. They're thin and stretched out, and they come together at the upper margin, and the air comes through underneath and causes them to vibrate. The head voice is built through top-down singing. So let's do a little bit of that. You all have your mute on, but let's just do a little top-down singing. Sing with me. Yes, and so when you did that, you just used your head voice and you brought your vocal folds together thinly and stretched them out, and you got that nice high pitch. Now let's look at belting or using more of a chest dominant sound. So the TA muscle is more engaged. So that means that your vocal folds are not spread out thin like this, they are thicker. So Matt Edwards, who is the founder of the musical theater vocal pedagogy degree at Shenandoah University, he gives this analogy. Okay, so take your hands and put them together, all four fingers. Okay, and now imagine that that is vibrating, right? That's your vocal folds vibrating in chest voice. Okay, so it's like womp, 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 right? So that would be like, ah, right? Now, if you want a little less engagement, take your pinky away and now vibrate there. Okay, so that would be a heavy mix. Okay, so let's try a little higher pitch, but we're going to use a heavy mix. Let's try an F and we're going to go, ah. Thank you. I see you all singing, which I love. That's great. Right. And so we definitely are using more speech, but we got a little bit, maybe a head voice in there. It's light enough that it can still vibrate and spin. If we try to use too much for the pitch that we're singing, we end up with a more aggressive sound that sometimes sounds pushed, right? Or like, oh gosh, let's not sing like that. That could cause vocal damage. So we have to kind of lighten up as we go up. Let's try now with a head mix. Okay, so this is going to be more head dominant, but it's going to have a little bit of speech in it. We're going to do this on an A. Okay, so it's not oh, which is pure head voice. We're going to use a little bit of speech like Minnie Mouse. Ah. Right. Okay. And now let's do a high note like this is a high D and we're going to use just our head voice. Yes. And so you're seeing here a picture of the vocal folds being thickened and vibrating for more of a belted sound. The vocal folds are shorter and fatter and they come together squarely like this. And the chest is a voice is built through bottom up singing. So if you want your kids to be better belters, but healthy belters, you can try a called approach from the bottom sliding up. So let's do that. Let's say we've got a bunch of kids who have only ever sung choral music and now they have to sing Defying Gravity or something, right? And so we need to help them build their speech tones and do a little bit of belting. So let's call together. Put your hands up because this really engages called voice. I want you to lean forward with me on your chair so that you're engaging your pelvic floor or your muscles around your hips and sing, "Hey, taxi." Try that with me. Yes, you just used your belted voice. Did it hurt your throat? Shake your head or nod it. Did that hurt your throat? Nah, nah. Right? We come out of the womb belting, okay? We come out going, wah, wah, wah. That is essentially a belted sound. So we've been belting since we were the day we were born, and we can do it healthily. We just have to learn how to connect to that part of ourself that we already have inside of us. So anything that is a natural call for a student can help them to find this more belted sound that is healthy. Another one I love to do with students is call your dog. So my dog's name is Hopper, and I'll often start in like even a high voice because kids can call in pretty high voices. So we'll go, Hopper, come back here. Try that. And now that pitch hop is actually a high D. Okay, and so now we're just gonna instead of saying it, we're gonna make it sound more like singing. Hopper, Hopper, come back here. You try. Yes, exactly. And so if they can call, then they can use more of a belted sound or a mixed sound. We were just using a mixed sound. Why do I call it mixed? Because it's too high to be just thyroarytenoid engagement. Once we get past C, remember, once we get past this note and above, we have to start using that vocal fold stretcher. The vocal cords have to start stretching. But we can still use some called sound or some spoken sound, and we call that a mix. So we're using some head voice, but we're also using some of our called or some of our speech tones. All right, I see things happening in the chat bar. Let me take a minute and go there. Why won't it show up? Oh, there it is. Okay, Let me pull them up. My dog is singing. My dog is whining with all my singing. I love it. I love it. Um, Sorry if your camera's not working. That's okay. No problem. Someone said that was the question I wanted to know the answer to also. Can you, Mary Beth, can you reiterate what that question is? Make sure that I answer that.
You did. It was a thyroid question. I have,
The thyroid question. Someone else wanted to know that question as well.
yeah, we all have, they call my area the thyroid belt in Kentucky.
Okay.
Everybody in my area has thyroid conditions, but I was
It's
glad someone asked it.
It is very common, I've found here, and it runs in my family, my dad, my grandma, everybody, and so of course I take thyroid medication. But it hasn't impacted my singing voice. I can still sing, so I'm so thankful for that. So this next slide is a little bit about mixing. Mixing is a skill that can be developed early. Elementary age students have a range of approximately B flat 3 to am I saying the right B flat? Wait a minute. No, B flat 4. I put the wrong thing. Let me see if I can fix it. Yeah, B flat 4 to E5, right? So B flat below middle C to about this E. That's about as high as they can comfortably go, and that's about as low as they can comfortably go. Now, there are exceptions, and they can go outside of that a little bit, and you may have students who very easily, sing a high G. That's fine. But I would say, most of the literature, for example, in the first and second graded books of this, don't go much above a high D or below a low B flat. So within this range, they should learn speech level singing with things like patter songs, lower range musical theater, pop music, and maybe a lower pitched folk song, as well as head voice dominant singing, like traditional classical and choral music, legit musical theater, and higher folk songs, etc. Additionally, beginning with top-down speech, elementary students can learn to mix for a contemporary musical theater, pop, or Disney prince or princess sounds. So, this is a sound that they're very familiar with. How do we get that sound? Just like what we just did, that hopper come back here on that high D. It's just a little more speech-infused head voice. That's what that Disney princess sound is, right? So, if it's too high. Who is that girl I see staring straight back at me? Right? That is a mixed head voice. It doesn't sound like opera or choral music. It's not, who is that girl I see? And it's not, who is that girl I see? It is a speech infused head voice. That's a B. Who is that girl I see? Who is that girl I see? Okay, so they can learn to make these mixed contemporary sounds as well. Using full chest voice or singing only in speech / their comfort range has its limitations and can be taxing on the young voice for prolonged periods of time. Equally, straight-toned choral singing at high ranges for long periods can also be taxing. And those choral singers, they need technical training. So the more pure and straight you want the sound, the more technical training you have to offer to your students because it's actually hard for them to do that technically, especially on high notes for long periods of time. So how do you train them to sing those sounds technically? Well, I am a huge advocate for sound waves. They're not called sound lasers, they're called sound waves. And so even though young voices don't have a lot of natural vibrato, we do want to let the sound have some wave to it or some movement to it so that it doesn't sound like it's being held tight or being pushed hard. And so that's just my advice for you with choral singing. Find blend using vowel using equal vowels. So teach your choirs to sing the same vowel shapes or as close to it as possible, each individual really matching the shape of the person next to them. And then let them have a little bit of give in the sound. And if you want it just really, really pure, then make sure the airstream is warm and that the larynx is relaxed. So all of that to say that singers need to exercise their TA and their CT muscles by engaging in chest dominant singing, head dominant singing, and mixed voice singing, which involves a combination of TA and CT muscles. And that will develop the full instrument. And some of us voice specialists call that cross training, that we are using all the different mechanisms of the voice. All right, I'm checking for chat bar again. Good, I'm glad this is helpful. Thank you. Someone said they liked my voice. I love that. Thank you, guys. I am not, but that is my favorite thing to sing is Disney Princess. That's my favorite color to sing, but I've studied so that I can sing all the colors. And my students certainly have an array and a variety of things that they like to sing. Let's just talk a little bit about vowels and resonance. A vowel is a sound made with your mouth open and your tongue shaped in the middle of your mouth. You can sustain sound on a vowel, as you know. Vowel shapes are made with the vocal tract. Vowels have pitch, just like a long tube has pitch. And vowel pitch is different than vocal cord pitch. So I'm only going to touch on this a little bit because it is a little bit scientific and heady, but we're going to talk about resonance and how vowels have pitch and what your students are looking for in order to project well in all vocal styles is ring. They are looking for the ring. Okay, so just let's do formants here for a sec. Okay, so let's just find our formants. Let's start with our throat because it's listed first. Okay, so we're going to find out that our throat has pitch. So I want you to open your mouth and just very gently tap your throat. See if you can get a pitch. Yes. Now try closing your mouth and see if you can get a pitch. Probably it's a lower pitch because opening your mouth raises your formant pitch in your throat. Another thing that can raise pitch is narrowing your pharynx. This is much trickier to do, but basically the space inside can be more narrow or more open, right? So sometimes we hear vocal technicians talking about opening your throat. Oh, that's going to give a very, open classical sound. When you narrow more like this, that's closer to a baby crying. Wah, wah, wah. You can try that sound that narrows the pharynx a little bit here. Wah, wah, wah. Makes a more narrow shape, and that's going to raise the pitch of your throat, of your vocal tract. Okay, then you can also raise the pitch in your mouth or lower it, right? So if you open your mouth, it'll raise your mouth pitch. Let's try it. You hear how it goes higher and lower depending on if I close or open my mouth? You can open your pharynx, so that's going to give you actually a higher pitch in the mouth, okay? In the mouth, not in the throat. And you can close your oral cavity and lift your tongue. So you can lift your tongue and close. That's going to give you a higher pitch than if you open your oral cavity. Right? So, okay, all of that to teach you about formants. So your mouth is a resonant cavity. Your throat is a resonant cavity. You also have resonant cavities in your sinuses and in your nasal cavity. So you can resonate a lot of places. So why does it matter that your mouth makes pitch? Because you want the mouth pitch and the throat pitch to be sympathetic or friendly to the vocal fold pitch. So whatever pitch you're making here at your vocal fold level, you want it to come through a tube that naturally resonates with that pitch. So if you have a student who's making a really dull, dark sound, you might encourage them to raise their formants a little bit, and they're going to get more ring in their vocal tone, right? So let's see. Let's try this opening my jaw and mouth thing. So I'm just going to do an ah. Okay, so I'm going to do it with my mouth closed first. Oh. Now I'm going to try it with my mouth open. Ah. You can hear how all of a sudden that open space brought more sheen and more color to the voice. You can also adjust the whole tube so you can brighten your formants and get more ring in the voice by shortening your tube a bit, which would be bringing your lips this way. Okay, so this is for belting and mixing mostly. We usually go this way for choral singing. We go this way for belting and mixing. This is going to brighten it. One short day in the Emerald City, right? Compared to, I'm now lengthening my vocal tract from here to here. One short day in the Emerald City. Not really what you want for that style of song, right? But there are styles of song where you do want that. So you can see how you can brighten your spaces, brighten your vowels, and get more sheen in the voice and get more ring. And this can be helpful for mixing especially. But it can also brighten up a choral sound. So if you're feeling like, ooh, that's a little dark and dull, I'd really like a little more ring in that. These are things you can do to get some more ring in the sound. Okay, so we're going to just talk about the formant overall shape. So in head dominant or traditional classical light singing, we have what we call inverted megaphone. Okay, so we have rounded lips in the front, and we have an open, tall palate and an open throat. Okay, so you can see how, like I gave a picture of what an actual megaphone looks like, and then I gave a picture of what I think your vocal tract looks like. That's a little bit closer to like biologically what's happening. Okay, so you've got your mouth tube, you've got that lifted palate, you've got your tongue, and then you've got this nice open pharynx. And so let's just sing Oh dear Sue in that shape. Oh dear Sue. We're rounded here. We're open here. Ready, go. Oh dear Sue. Right. So this kind of formant configuration is very desirable for a lot of traditional and choral music in order to create these sort of darker, rounder vowels. We are modifying towards this tall, round shape. So vowels that are naturally bright, like E and A, we're going to make them a little bit taller and rounder and shape them closer to O and U. E, A, to make them match those other more open vowels. Let me check my chat. I see you talking. I'm glad you're enjoying this. All right. So for belting and speech level, we're going to do something in our formants called the megaphone. Okay. So now we have an open mouth and we're more narrow back here. We're going to let our tongue be more lifted into our palate shape. We might even narrow our pharynx a little bit. So we're making the back part more narrow and we're opening the front part. Okay. This leads to something I like to call belt mouth. When you see a professional musical theater singer belt, you will see them make this shape. Okay. So we are going to lift. We're going to open our mouth. And then we're going to let our tongue fill the space. Don't try to lower it or make a lot of throat space. And then we're going to let our pharynx just sit in this sort of position that babies make when they cry. Wah, wah, wah. So just make that sound with me. Wah, wah, wah. Right. Now we don't want this. Why don't we want the corners really wide? It makes an ugly sound, but also it tightens the larynx. We don't really want the larynx tightened. We can allow the larynx to be not as low as in that classical traditional sound. It can be more neutral like when we talk, but we don't want it pulled up and tight. So we're going to release the corners because then these muscles will also release. They're just sort of sympathetic muscles. So we still got our corners this way, but we're going to lift and stretch this way. So we kind of are making a triangle here this way. All right, now let's sing Oh Dear Sue, but we're going to stay closed in the back, open in the front, and we're going to call a little. Oh dear Sue. Try that. Oh dear Sue. Right, it's a different sound, right? Because you're singing in megaphone, not inverted megaphone, megaphone. And so this is one of the ways to help your students find this speech level or more called singing. Some people call it belting. Now, for some people, belting is a dirty word. If it's a dirty word for you, I understand because it can be done very poorly and in a way that's very loud and could potentially damaging to the voice and all of that. And sometimes when you say that word to kids, they do weird things. So you do not ever have to use that word in your classroom. You can call it calling. You can call it speech level. There's lots of different ways to get at this sound. So we're amplifying higher harmonics by raising our formants, opening our mouth, closing the backspace, and using more of a bitten, a bited, a bited mouth shape, and modifying towards brighter vowels like ah, bright ah, eh, and eh. And so when we have a vowel that's not at all like that, that does not do a mix or a belt very well, we modify it. For example, ooh does not mix very well. It does not make a belted sound very well. So if I had you, I would modify that to or yo, yo, because that sits in that megaphone shape a lot better. My tongue is high, my mouth is open, because when I sing ooh, it's closed here and open back here. It's an instant inverted megaphone, right? So I can't get it into that speech singing. So I have to modify my vowel if I want it to sound like I'm mixing or belting, like I'm calling the sound. Ah, bright ah is another great one. Some people use like as in cup. That one's good too. Okay, so we shorten the vocal tract by raising the larynx, but only to neutral larynx, not to a tight larynx. And we can also narrow the vocal tract a little bit. They call it the area epiglottic sphincter. It's the area just right here above the vocal folds, and it's where babies narrow when they cry. Okay, so fancy word for where the babies cry. Wah! And you can feel it when you do it. You can feel it narrow there just a little bit. You don't want it super tight, and you don't want to think that you're making sound there. You always want to go through there, but you can definitely feel that sort of hourglass shape almost in the throat. Okay, let me check for chats. Yes, there's so much to know and do. Amen. Woo. All right. So breathing and posture. Here's the good news. Breathing and posture are the same for both vocal styles. And you couldn't have known this 40 years ago because this is new voice science. Most of my research for this happened between like 2012 and 2024. So 2024. So you really are learning things that are sort of cutting edge vocal technique right now. Alignment's still important. Lowering the diaphragm is still important. The ribs expanding is still important. The main difference is immediacy. So when we sing this classical choral sound, we take a long time to breathe in and then we float through it. Okay, so let's just try that on an ah. Breathe in and float. Okay, but when we are using more of a called sound, it's going to be more immediate, like when you call. When you call, you don't go before you do it. You just do it. Hey! Wow! Mom! So do you feel how your breathing engages right away? That's the main breathing difference. Cool. So basically the same. That just basically says the breathing is the same for both styles, but that immediacy, that's the main difference. Um, so head dominant singing involves a longer inhalation phase. Belting requires more immediacy and onset of breath support. And belting and mixing in general require less airflow and more air pressure because the TA muscle is thicker. And so it's holding the breath back more, right? So you're going to need a little more air pressure to make it go. And there's not going to be as much air flowing through. And so one of the things that makes it hard for students sometimes is if they're using too much air through their vocal cords, right? So they're trying to sing, um, um, let's see, I'm trying to think of a belt song quick. We are revolting children living in revolting times, right? But what they're getting is we are revolting children living in revolting times, right? And they cannot get into that speech mix. One of the things that can help sometimes is just asking them to move their breath backward as well as forward. So because we do have backflow that's happening all the time, some air hits our teeth and our lips and goes back down our throat. Some of the sound goes back down our throat. And so asking them to concentrate on that or on heating their palate, making it warmer, can help them to find that reduced airflow vocal fold vibration. They still need airflow. They definitely can't be holding their breath. You'll know it when they're doing that because it sounds constipated. It's terrible. Okay. So you want air to be flowing through, but not as fast as when they're singing that classical head dominant sound. So let's see. So let me try that going from we are revolting children to a little less air. We are revolting children to even less air, really warm. We are revolting children living in revolting times. I made those vocal changes just by reducing airflow and increasing air pressure. Okay, I know we're coming to a cap here, guys. So I'll send you the rest of this. Here's some other vocal style elements to consider. Clean, clear, or grungy. Someone mentioned vocal fry. So here's a fun fact. Vocal fry doesn't hurt your student as long as they don't do it like every second of the day. Okay. So clearing their throat is actually worse for them than vocal fry. So we can actually use vocal fry sometimes if they're singing really breathily and the vocal folds aren't coming together. You can go, which is sucking through the vocal folds. It's kind of like a vocal fry, but backwards and then making the sound. Ah, why does that work? Because when they suck through, the vocal folds just come together naturally, and then they're like, "Oh, that's how I do that." And then they can make the clear sound. The vocal folds can come together. But this sound, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not going to hurt them. Okay, so if they want to go in their sound, right, like um, don't you know I'm no good for you? They can do that. Okay. It's not going to hurt them. Okay. You may not like that sound, but it's not going to hurt them. When would you use that in a group singing situation? Maybe just for fun, for trysies. But you might have a soloist that likes to do that little bit of grunginess, and that is fine. It is if it's right for the style, you're good. Clean from above, onset or scooped. So are we singing Caro mio ben, or are we singing why? Right? Are we going a scoopy uppy, or are we coming down from above and making that beautiful angelic sound? These choices determine what style it sounds like we're singing in. More twang or brass or less twang. So twang is just that narrowed pharynx, right? So just brassier sound. I forget about the boy, right? Rather than forget about the boy. Cool and warm vocal colors, flexible or sustained, right? So am I singing, oh, Danny boy, or am I singing, um, right? And that goes into, things like runs and improvising and those kinds of things. Phrase delivery, how do the phrases start and end? Generally, if you're singing like a rock or a pop, short phrases, especially for up tempos, just clip that phrase right off at the end. It'll make it sound more like rock. If you want it to sound more legit or traditional, then sustain that phrase. Articulation and bite rate. So generally, country music, some form of folk song have a lower bite rate, meaning they're not going to open their mouth as much. So if you're doing a bluegrass song and the kids are not really opening their mouth that much, it's okay. That's probably closer to bluegrass. As long as you can hear them and they're articulating, that might be closer to the actual vocal style than if they're opening their mouth really wide. So different styles have different bite rates or different degrees of opening the mouth for articulation. I hope this is helpful and has given you things to think about. I will send this out. I'm glad this is helpful. And I did include a song list that you can look at on your own time, that has 4 different kinds of singing in choral arrangement. And so just a chance to listen to children using their voices in different ways.
Dr. MJ, this was like probably one of my favorite sessions that I've been a part of. So this is so fascinating. I loved it. I did want to mention there was one question. Sorry, the chat's kind of going crazy. That someone asked. Hold on just a minute. Let me get back up here. It says, why do I feel like I can control my breathing when I do breathing exercises, but when I sing, I run out of breath much more quickly?
Oh, my guess is that you're using too much airflow and not enough air pressure. So we can solve that right now in the last minute of our session here. If you want to, you can stand up with me. You don't have to, but this could be really helpful for you. Okay, so this part of our body controls air pressure, our ribs. Okay, this part of our body controls airflow. So when I breathe in, I'm going to expand all of it. I'm going to expand my abs and my ribs. But this is going to move in for airflow, and this is going to lean out more. Now, it does come down and in. Your ribs do come in. They're made to do that. Okay, but if you can lean into those ribs a little bit and get a little more air pressure, a lot of the times then you're not going to run out of breath as fast, right? So let me just do a 5 note. The first time I'm just going to let my ribs collapse. Ah. Now this time I'm going to lean up and out on my ribs and try to maintain some air pressure like my body is a balloon. Okay, this is still going to control airflow. Here we go. Ah. So that vocal change was just from engaging my ribs and creating some air pressure in my body. I hope that's helpful.
That's awesome. Thank you so very much. This has been just a fantastic session. I'm not a singer. I am not great at it, but but I feel like I've learned a lot. I really have enjoyed. Thank you so very much for being with us today. Amazing. Just great stuff. I love it so much. So good. So, teachers, I have dropped the evaluation into the chat. So please make sure that you get that filled out as soon as you can. And I will, once I get the information, I'll make sure that I post the slides. So, and of course, I'll post the recording, so you can go back and review because there's so much stuff and your voice is just beautiful. Like it is just beautiful. It really is.
You.
So beautiful. I have really enjoyed it. Thank you again. You are so amazing. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. It's been such an honor to come and share with you. Teachers are the